I'm being forced to marry the 8-year-old I babysit, and this was just the rehearsal. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes were the buttons on Mr. Moreau's waistcoat, straining for their lives. Tiny, pearlescent things fighting a losing war against the vast, tweed-covered expanse of his belly. He and his wife stood before me, looking like a pair of antique porcelain dolls that had been left in the oven too long. Plump, round, with painted-on smiles that didn't reach their glossy, vacant eyes. Between them stood Lucian, their son, dressed in a miniature tuxedo that was probably worth more than my car. I was in a chair. My wrists and ankles screamed against thick velvet ropes. The last thing I remembered was the boy's sketchbook, the front door, the feeling of cold air on my face before, nothing. How did they even get me in here? They were both so soft, so doughy. The answer came with a sound I was starting to know too well. The grinding scrape of stone on hardwood floor. One of them was behind me. One of those goddamn concrete nuns. Up close, it was worse. So much worse. Her habit and wimple were a solid, pockmarked gray. But under the petrified veil, I could see the ghost of a face. Wrinkles in the stone around her eyes would deepen and shift, a grotesque parody of expression. And her eyes? Christ. Her eyes were real. They were dark and wet and full of a kind of pain that had burned itself out long ago, leaving only ash. A single tear escaped, tracing a dark, clean path through the grime on her stone cheek before it vanished into the corner of a smile that was carved into her face. A smile of pure agony. Her arms, impossibly, moved with a fluid grace. She shuffled to a towering bookshelf against the far wall, her movements silent save for that awful scraping. With a stone finger, she tapped the spine of a heavy, leather-bound book. Paradise Lost, of course. The entire bookshelf shuddered, then slid sideways, revealing a gaping black maw of a staircase, lit by the flickering dance of candles along the walls. The one thing I didn't think to check, I muttered, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. As if she'd heard my thoughts from across the room, Mrs. Moreau let out a little tittering laugh. "Oh, it's a good thing you didn't find that, dear. What a bother that would have been." It was only then, in the strange, flickering light, that I looked down at myself. I wasn't in my jeans and hoodie anymore. I was wearing a dress, a deep, blood-red thing that shimmered with a million tiny crystals. It was beautiful. I hated it. "How did you—" The nun by the stairs turned its head, a slow, ratcheting motion. It gave me a slow, deliberate wink with one of its horribly human eyes. "All right, Zosia, I know this all looks a little unorthodox," Mr. Moreau began, his voice like warm honey. "Unorthodox? There is not a single word in any language that could make me okay with any of this." "Duly noted," he said, his smile never wavering. He reached into his pocket, not a syringe, something worse. A small, ornate perfume atomizer. He gave it a little squeeze, and a fine, sweet-smelling mist puffed into the air. Before I could turn my head, he was on me, pressing it against my neck. It didn't hurt. It was just cold. A deep, spreading cold that started in my throat and seeped into my veins, turning my blood to slush. My limbs felt like they were packed in sand. My vision swam, the edges turning a fuzzy, dark brown. The last thing I heard was Mrs. Moreau's sing-song voice, giggling. "Sleepy time, my sweet." I woke up cold. The red dress was gone, replaced by a thin hospital gown. I was strapped to something hard and metal. An operating table. The air smelled of ozone and damp earth. I was in the basement. Dozens of screens flickered on the walls around me, a bank of monitors showing every angle of the house. The living room, the kitchen, the pool, Lucian's bedroom. They hadn't left at all, not once. They were always here, always watching. The phone calls, the way they knew exactly where I was. It all clicked into place with a sickening thud in my gut. On the monitor for Lucian's room, I could see him surrounded by 3 of those stone nuns. They were measuring him for his tuxedo, fixing his hair with their clumsy, rock-hard fingers. A voice from the corner of the room snapped me out of it. Awake, are we? Good morning, sunshine. Mrs. Moreau emerged from the shadows, stroking my hair with a hand that was surprisingly cold. We do so like you, Zosia. You have spirit. We just want what's best for our little boy. He's going to do such great things. Yeah, I'm getting that vibe, I choked out. Look, how about this? You let me go. I won't tell anyone. I'll just disappear. He doesn't want me. Oh, darling, she cooed, pinching my cheek hard enough to make my eyes water. That's what's so funny. He does. Something inside me snapped. I was done being polite. I was done being scared. I was just done. I am not your fucking darling. Without thinking, I twisted my head and spat. It arced through the air and landed right on her powdered cheek. She froze. Slowly, she raised a hand, touching the spot, then looked at the smear of saliva on her fingertips. Her smile was gone. For the first time, her face was a blank mask. Oh, honey, she whispered, her voice losing all its warmth. You really, really shouldn't have done that. She snapped her fingers. Not loud, just a dry little click. From the darkest corner of the basement, another nun lurched forward. This one wore a surgical mask of stained, yellowed cloth over its carved smile. In its hand, it held nothing. It didn't need to. It raised its right hand, a solid block of concrete, and brought it down on my right leg. There wasn't a crack. It was a dull, wet, grinding crunch. The sound of bone turning to gravel. I screamed. I think I screamed. I couldn't hear it over the white-hot static that exploded behind my eyes. The pain was absolute. It was everything. That's what happens when you disrespect your future mother-in-law, Mrs. Moreau said, her voice casual, as if commenting on the weather. Through the tears and the roaring in my ears, I gasped out, I will never, ever be your daughter. Then the world folded in on itself and went black. I wasn't out for long. A sharp slap brought me back. Both of them were leaning over me now, their faces identical masks of pleasant concern. The pain in my leg was a living thing, a bonfire devouring me from the inside out. I could see on the monitors that the house was filling with people now, guests, all dressed in immaculate black and white. Out by the pool, the priest from the other night was standing with Lucian, rehearsing something. Zosia, we truly are sorry about your leg, Mr. Moreau said, adjusting his tie. But you simply must learn to cooperate. Can't you see the bigger picture? The bigger picture? The bigger picture is, you want me to marry your 8-year-old demon-spawned son. Is that about right? Am I missing any of the finer details? Well, you've taken our money, Mrs. Moreau chirped. We have your blood, Lucian is, attached to your essence now. The deal is done, sweet pea. You're one of us. Don't you worry, though, Mr. Moreau added. The missus knows a doctor. He'll fix that little boo-boo right up. Super, I croaked. Excellent. Once that's handled, we can start going over your part in the ceremony. Won't that be fun? I was empty. I had nothing left to fight with. Sure, I whispered. Whatever you say. Fantastic, he boomed, clapping his soft hands together. They left me alone then, turning off the monitors as they went. I was plunged into a perfect, silent, suffocating darkness. Alone with the pain and the steady drip, drip, drip of water somewhere in the basement. I started to wonder if I was already dead. Maybe this was hell. It felt like it. After what felt like an eternity, a rectangle of light appeared at the top of the stairs. Footsteps descended. A switch clicked, flooding the basement with harsh, sterile light. Standing there was the priest. He had a white lab coat thrown over his black robes, a stethoscope dangling next to his silver cross. It was the most insane thing I had ever seen. Good evening, Zosia. I was told you had a mishap with your leg. You've got to be shitting me. Now, now. No need for that language. He glided over, his touch surprisingly gentle as he examined my knee. The slightest movement sent a fresh wave of agony through me, and I bit back a sob. Yes, just as I thought, he said with professional gravity. A shattered patella. No shit, Sherlock. Hold still. He didn't spit. He leaned in close, so his lips were almost touching the mangled flesh. He whispered something. It wasn't Latin, or any language I knew. It was dry and sibilant, like sand skittering across glass. Then he touched my knee. The pain didn't vanish. It was muted, pushed away. I could still feel that it was broken, that it was a ruin of bone and tissue, but the screaming agony was gone, replaced by a dull, distant ache, as if the leg belonged to someone else. "Here we are," he said, patting my good leg. "Try to stay off it. We wouldn't want to spoil the big day." He walked away, leaving me in darkness again. I didn't cry this time. I was too far past that. I think I slept. I dreamed of nothing. When I woke, Lucian was there, sitting on a stool beside the table, sketching in his pad. He looked up, his eyes bright, and showed me the drawing. It was the ceremony. Him and me, standing under an arch of white roses by the pool. My red dress flowed around me. He was slipping a ring on my finger. The priest was beaming. 100 smiling guests cheered as doves flew into a perfect sunset. It was beautiful. So horrifyingly, perfectly beautiful. For a split second, a twisted little part of my brain thought, maybe this wouldn't be so bad. He kissed his fingers and pressed them gently to my forehead. His touch was warm. Then his parents came back in, clucking and cooing, and shooed him upstairs. "He's just so excited," Mrs. Moreau explained. "And today's the day," Mr. Moreau sang. "Time to rehearse your vows." He unstrapped my restraints. My muscles screamed as I sat up. For a second, I just sat there. Then, I moved. I launched myself off that table. My right leg buckled, but the pain was a distant echo. I scrambled for the stairs, hauling ass like the hounds of hell were on my heels. They were. They didn't even try to stop me. I knew why when I reached the top of the stairs. A nun stood there, blocking the way, its stone arms crossed over its chest. A silent, unmovable sentinel. As I skidded to a halt, Lucian stepped out from behind her. He wasn't smiling. He just looked at me with a sad sort of patience. Then he took my hand. His grip was iron. I tried to pull away, but it was like being handcuffed to a freight train. He pulled me, effortlessly, up the last few stairs and through the house, out towards the blinding afternoon sun and the shimmering blue of the pool. He dragged me down an aisle of scattered rose petals, straight to the altar where the priest was waiting. The crowd of guests, dozens of them, all turned and started to cheer. They clapped and whistled. Someone shouted, "Kiss the bride." "We have to practice," Lucian whispered, his voice small and childlike. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. I wrote something. It says, "Dear Zosia, you are very nice. Thank you for being my babysitter." "Wife," the priest corrected gently. "Oh, right. Thank you for being my wife. I can't wait for you to read me stories and make me grilled cheese." Mrs. Moreau was in the front row, openly weeping into a silk handkerchief. "My baby," she sobbed. "My sweet boy." "Hold on," I said, yanking my hand, but his grip was absolute. I turned to the crowd. "Are you all insane? Have you lost your goddamn minds?" This is a child. An 8-year-old child. They just stared back, their smiles wide and unwavering. They started clapping again. Zosia," Lucian mumbled, tugging on my hand. I was in the middle of my speech. "Right, sorry. Carry on. What else could I do?" I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching some horrible movie. "And I promise," he continued, reading from his paper, "not to let the nuns hurt you anymore." "Well, Sammy," the priest chimed in brightly, "do you have anything you'd like to say to your beloved?" I laughed. A dry, cracked, broken sound. "Let's see. This is the most fucked up thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. You are all completely insane. And Lucian, you're a monster, and your parents are worse. How's that for vows?" The crowd roared. They leaped to their feet, cheering and stomping as if I'd just delivered the most romantic speech ever written. "Wonderful," the priest exclaimed. "Then, Lucian, you may kiss the bride." Before I could say, "Did you not just hear me?" I looked down at Lucian. His face was beet red. He looked so shy, so embarrassed, so happy. Then his feet lifted off the ground. He floated up, slowly, silently, until we were eye to eye. The world went quiet. The cheering, the splashing water, the wind in the trees, it all just stopped. The only sound was a low hum inside my own skull. "What the hell?" I breathed, and then his lips were on mine. They were warm and soft, like any kid's. I tried to push him away, but it was like pushing against a marble statue. I was frozen, paralyzed. trapped in a silent world with this floating child god, as the crowd I could no longer hear celebrated. When he pulled back, he was blushing. The sound of the world crashed back in. Champagne corks popped. People were laughing, hugging, praising Lucian. And I just stood there, glued to the altar. This was just the rehearsal. The thought echoed in the empty, silent place in my mind where my sanity used to be. This was just practice.